The Russian army encountered serious difficulties in the Sumy direction. The attempt at an offensive finally petered out. This is evidenced by reports from the Russian Z resource, Northern Channel, close to the Russian army. According to his report, Russian troops are still trapped in a cauldron in the Kondratovka area. Kondratovka, we don't control it, we just exist there. In a forest pocket in the south of the village, surrounded on 3 sides by Ukrainians, and on the 4th by a river, writes Z Channel. The occupiers' units were cut off from supplies in several settlements at once. In the village of Andreyevka, Ukrainian forces are slowly but surely crawling north, while the Russians remain without reinforcements. The situation is similar in Alekseyevka, where the occupiers of the 155th Brigade are holding the south of the village, in conditions in which not a mouse can slip through, let alone reinforcements. In the Yunakovka area, according to the authors, there is a constant change of control over the territory. The center and the west are changing hands. The channels paid special attention to the negligence of the command in Sadki. There, according to the Russians themselves, they gave up on demining, which led to the death of Russian soldiers and the loss of equipment. -2 motorcycles and the boys are gone, notes Severny Canal. In Besalovka, according to the channel, Ukrainian troops allowed the Russian 56th Airborne Assault Brigade to advance only to previously prepared lines, after which they launched a counterattack. The result was heavy losses. Such honest, albeit unofficial rhetoric from Russian sources contrasts with statements from the Russian Defense Ministry, which continues to talk about progress and successes. Against the backdrop of obvious problems with logistics, manning and command, the war unleashed by Russia against Ukraine is plunging its army deeper into a state of systemic crisis. Ukraine has begun to systematically strike at one of the aggressors' most vulnerable areas, internal logistics. This concerns both the railway infrastructure and facilities that ensure the movement of citizens and military cargo. Israeli military observer Sergei Ozlender drew attention to this in his blog. The Ukrainians, while the matter is still going on, have begun to strike at railway junctions. If they manage to cause confusion in railway communication, then in the Russian Federation, at least in its European part, there will be big problems with movement. The expert writes, railways remain the main artery for supplying Russian troops, especially in the central and western parts of the Russian Federation. The motor transport network in these regions is poorly developed. In wartime, the army requires constant supplies of equipment, fuel and ammunition, and a significant portion of these goods goes by rail. Not everyone has a car there. The road network is so-so, and in good times there are traffic jams everywhere. But the main thing is freight transportation, which goes to a decent extent by rail, including in the interests of the active army, notes Ozlender. In his opinion, after the start of attacks on logistics, passenger transportation in Russia will be immediately cut. It is clear that passenger transportation will be the first to go under the knife. Everything for the front, everything for victory, but there will be consequences for them too, the journalist wrote. He expects the imminent appearance of barbecues and machine guns on Russian trains to intercept Ukrainian UAVs. It is not only the aggressors' railway infrastructure that is under attack. In recent weeks, Russian civil aviation has regularly stopped operations in the central regions due to the threat of attacks by Ukrainian drones. Airports are being closed across the country, from Moscow to Tatarstan. This causes flight delays, traffic jams, and nervousness within the Russian Federation itself. Now the aggressors' railway is under attack. This direction is of strategic interest. The length of the tracks in Russia is enormous, and each sabotage causes cascading disruptions in schedules and deliveries. Russia is too big a country, and that is its weakness. Maintaining the operation of logistics routes requires colossal efforts. Ukraine, using its drones, methodically disrupts these chains, undermining the Kremlin's ability to quickly supply the army and maintain internal stability. Kiev's new strategy of attacking not only warehouses and barracks, but also rails, stations and logistics centers may eventually become a decisive factor in exhausting Russia's potential. Ukraine is beginning to destroy the aggressor's rear. The strikes that Ukraine carries out with its drones every night on objects in Russia, including near Moscow, are aimed not only at hitting the target, but also exert psychological pressure on residents of Russian settlements, in particular making them doubt the capabilities of their air defense. This was stated by the Deputy General Director of the Company for the Production of Electronic Warfare Equipment, former officer of the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Anatoly Krapchinsky, on the air of Radio NV. According to him, the Moscow region has a large number of targets that could be of interest to Ukraine. In particular, he named a rather interesting place in the Moscow region city of Korolev. This is about a plant that produces missiles that the enemy subsequently fires at Ukraine from strategic and tactical aviation. We have repeatedly hit some enterprises. Let's remember that our drones even flew into Moscow city, Krapchinsky noted. However, the fact that the strikes occur consistently every night, when the news constantly reports that Moscow is being bombed, is also a means of psychological pressure on Russians, especially residents of Moscow and St. Petersburg, the aviation expert believes. And I think that this is how it should continue. I am not betting that there will be some kind of coup d'etat there. However, the fact that they do not have high-quality air defense systems, that they do not meet the requirements, this may already hint at some kind of political or psychological pressure, he noted. Earlier, drones attacked Moscow and the Moscow region on the night of July the 20th, causing fires there. The Russian Defense Ministry reported that 16 drones were shot down. Moscow Mayor Sergei Sobyanin stated that cars caught fire from falling debris and a residential high-rise was damaged. In addition, due to the UAV attack, all Moscow airports, Sheremetyevo, Domodedovo, Nukovo and Zhukovsky, stopped receiving and sending planes. On the night of July the 18th, drones attacked Moscow and Zazinsk. Russian media reported that at least 4 drones were shot down as they approached the capital. In Zazinsk, Nizhny Novgorod Oblast, at least 10 explosions were heard, according to local residents. Also at the Nizhny Novgorod airport, which is located about 25 kilometers from Zazinsk, a carpet plan was introduced.